welcome back to Change Your Life podcast. I'm Dwight Gillespie, your host. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and by all means, share this with your friends. Okay, so what we do here, I wrote a book called Price Tags. It's out right now. You can get it on Amazon.com. You can also get it on Barnes & Noble, I believe. It's available wherever books are sold. I always recommend a hard copy, but we do have it in ebook. And my personal favorite, the audio book, which I recorded myself. It came out really good, if I do say so myself. Anyway, and I do. Anyway, what we do here is I give you suggestions on things that I've learned along the way in changing my life for the better. I've been in recovery for over 9 years now. I've been around recovery for almost 40 years, but I've been clean and drug-free. Alcohol is a drug. Clean and drug-free now for 9 years and change. 9 years, 7 months and change. Anyway, I wanted to talk today about one of the biggest problems that I've had in my life, and it's a really big problem, and that is me. Anyway, the title of this podcast is "My Self-Will Wants Me Dead." And it's the only conclusion that I can really come to. I've had a lifetime of making really, really poor decisions and doing things that have to lead me to believe that some part of me is just not happy being alive. From being a kid, I remember being drunk and with my cousin, and we'd been stopped by a police officer, and I wanted a cigarette from him, and I gave him a lot of expletives and gave him some, because he wouldn't give me one. And it got really nasty. My cousin wound up punching me in the face, and I was knocked out by that because the cop said, either you shut him up or I'm going to take you both in. And so he shut me up. Anyway, there was another incident when I was a little kid, and my sister had locked me in my room to clean it. She wanted me to clean the room, and I thought it was a really good idea to jump out the second story window to avoid cleaning the room. Landed on my back. I thought it was broken. So did she. She felt very guilty. Getting married. Oh, that was a great one too. I married a woman who I really didn't like very much, and apparently she felt the same. But we got married anyway because that's what you do when you want to, control someone and make sure that you can put them under your thumb, right? You marry them, this way you own them. And no, it doesn't work that way, I know. But these were just wonderful things, putting enough heroin into myself to knock a horse over. These are some of the brilliant decisions that I've made in my life, and most of them were made very impetuously, obviously. Not a lot of thought went into them. They were things that seemed really, really good at the time, and I didn't give a lot of consideration to what the negative outcomes. One of my favorite things to say was, "What's the worst that could happen?" Right? And there's a lot of really bad shit that can come from that. Let me tell you something. My cousin and I running away, and we were stopped in a little town. Now I grew up in Haledon, New Jersey, right outside of Patterson. I'm from the Northeast. I hung around in the city a lot as a kid, New York City as a kid. I live in Queens. So, here we are. I was 16, he was 15, and we got arrested in this little town called Pine Bluffs, Wyoming. And, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, we didn't know anybody. Nobody knew where we were. Like, these people could have done anything to us. Fortunately, they were very nice people. But it was just this, not thinking things through. This litany of really bad ideas that seemed really good at the time. I remember my high school guidance counselor, his name was Joe Haywang, and he used to wear these really loud jackets and everything, very, very 70s, And he used to say, "Mr. Gillespie, the road to hell is paved with bad intention." Because I never meant for it to turn out like that. I never meant to hurt people. I never meant for this, to go just absolute shit. It just did, because I didn't think it through. And I also didn't want to take advice from people. I don't know if you can relate to this or not, but up until the age of 50, I knew everything in the world. I knew everything there was to know about absolutely everything. You couldn't tell me anything, so even my ventures into recovery, right? I remember coming into recovery and just knowing that I had this thing cold. I knew, I listened. I came to a couple meetings. People, don't use, yeah, 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 and really believing that there was no need for me to listen to anybody. They have in recovery, whether it's whatever group it is, really, they have something called a sponsor, which is a person who's been doing this for a while, and they guide you through this and tell you how to get off drugs. In my case, it was drugs, whether it's food or gambling or sex or whatever. They have, there's like, I think at this time, there's almost 40 12-step programs that you can join. There's like tons of little things. And so they have, if you want to stop, basket weaving, we have a 12-step recovery program for that. Anyway, but I didn't want to give into this. I didn't want to admit that people knew more than I did about anything. And it wasn't until I was in such a state in my life, I had been at a point where the heroin was unbelievable. I just couldn't stop using. I mean, the pills. I remember I would go to cop, to purchase drugs from people, and I would like be crying, man. 'Cause I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop, and I would promise to wean myself off. This was my favorite, right? I go cop like 1,000 pills, and I'd have like all the money I could get, and I buy all these pills, and I say, okay, I'm gonna get up. I gotta stop. Like this is 20 for this day, and then the next day I'll only do 18. And I would break down the piles in like 3 days. I'm taking from the last day and putting it in. And it never worked, but I never wanted to admit that I have no idea how to do this, right? I wanted to write a book. And when I was a kid, like I've written my whole life. First story I ever wrote, I still remember it. I was in third grade, and I wrote a story about being a window with a baseball about to go through it. And oh my God, I'm going to shout. It was really good. I still remember it. It was a good story. So good that they thought that somebody wrote it for me. And that was like the greatest compliment. And, I didn't even get indignant about it. But anyway, so I've written all the time, but I never took classes because, every word that came out of my mouth was gold. I never submitted works to anybody because these stupid people didn't know what good writing was anyway. It was to such a point that nothing was ever going to get done, and it wasn't really until I got clean that I started to take this seriously. And I started taking classes. I took different college courses, like non-matriculating courses. I took courses in different venues in Manhattan to that teach writing, and I'm not going to endorse any of them, but well, I would if they, were willing. And we'll talk about that too. Contact me below. Um, but it wasn't until then that I realized that not every word that comes out of my mouth was gold, and not everything that I wrote on paper, couldn't be changed. And I had to believe that others could help me in many different facets of my life. When I came into recovery this time around, I was so beaten down that something in me said, look, I'm going to do whatever these people tell me to do because I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. And I looked around the room, and it was the first meeting that I had gone into. There was a person who he came up to me and he gave me a hug, and he said, welcome. And he gave me some information on that particular 12-step program. And he said, this is what we're about. Cause he's like, so, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to go to anything with an A. He's like, well, I remember him, he looked at me, and I was filthy. Like, you have to understand, like I hadn't bathed in weeks. I no longer shaved because I couldn't look myself in the mirror to shave. I was so ashamed of what I had become and what I was at that point. And every day was just an exercise in futility, and I remember going into that meeting and feeling hope for the first time. And I tell you something about hope, man. You don't know what hope is until you don't have any of it left. And that's when you learn. And they lit a fire, and they told me, there's somebody came up to me in that meeting and said, you never have to use again. You never have to use drugs again. And I believed it. And he said, you only have to go through that kick one more time and you're done. Like, you never have to go through this again, right? And that was like because my self-will was willing to let me die over this. It was willing to take me out. My self-will, and it does it in many different facets, right? And I'll talk about this a little bit more as well. because it wasn't just the drugs, right? And in recovery, sometimes they say, oh, you put down the spoon or the pipe or the syringe and you pick up the fork, And I had put like 80 pounds on, and I realized again, like this was my soul. I want to eat. And I used to say the most clever thing was this, well, you got to eat. This is so hard to stop. And I've recently, I started a program maybe 5 months ago. It's not a 12-step program, but it's a plan that I incorporate my 12-step program around to eat better and to exercise. And I've dropped 60 pounds now by doing this, and I'm doing it naturally. And I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. I'm doing it because I feel better this way. It's not about looks or anything. And look, people say, oh, fat shaming. And it's not fat shaming. I don't care what anybody says. For me, it's not even about being thin. It's about being healthy. And being healthy for me, it comes with being thin. I eat the proper foods. I eat the proper amounts, and I exercise. And as a result of that, I'm getting thinner. And I had knee surgery. I had knee replacement surgery, right, on my right knee. I was going to do my left, but since losing the weight, my left knee feels so much better. My hip was going, and my hip doesn't hurt anymore. Like, these are the positives. I'm almost off my blood pressure medication. It's been reduced now, because my blood pressure's coming down. And like all of these things, I was pre-diabetic. I'm not pre-diabetic anymore. And maybe when you're 25, you could delude yourself into believing that you're healthy at any size. As you get older, you'll realize that is absolute 100% bullshit. And anybody who tells you different is lying to you. I know there are people, oh, no, no. They're lying to you. They're lying to you. Type 2 diabetes, look it up. Joint disease, all this other rheumatoid arthritis, like all these things. I'm 59 years old now. Anyway, I don't want to get lost in all that. I want to talk about, that's my self-will. And my self-will will tell me things like that, by the way. As I'm ordering 2-3 entrees from the local Italian place up the street, Dante's, I'll give them a plug. It's good. Dante's here in Queens, because they're really good people up there. And I know they miss my business because I was eating like 2 or 3 entrees a day. And telling myself I'd like order it and say, well, I'll order, this is for tomorrow. I'll put it, knowing I'm going to eat it tonight, and what I had to do was, one of the things I did, I'll show it to you. I have a pause button that I put, I had it tattooed in here. So this way, like if I get a bright idea, I can like push the pause button and go, okay, wait a second. Is this really a good idea? Or is this just me just screwing with myself, looking for another way to die? I don't know that there's anything in my life that I haven't been addicted to. I always like to say that I use anything that makes me feel good until it doesn't, until it hurts. And that's pretty much the way I used to live my life. But since doing these things, I've done things like, I'm absolutely free of any mood and mind altering substances. I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. I quit. I was smoking 2.5 packs a day when I quit. I am on an exercise diet and exercise program. Like, I'm doing these things. I don't gamble. Like, these are the things that I'm doing in my life, because left to my own free will, left to my own devices, I would do all of that stuff. I want to feel good all of the time. And it's like one of my favorite movies, even when I was a kid, and it was very telling, is Pinocchio. Pinocchio, when I realized that these decisions, this feeling good all the time, turns you into a jackass. It turns you into a slave to all of these other devices, right? And I learned that. And knowing my self-will is going to kill me. I have to listen to other people. I have to take the advice of people who did this long before I did. When I came back into recovery and I said, listen, I'm going to listen to these people regardless of how brilliant I am, right? I'm going to listen to these people who have maintained being off drugs for 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. I have friends with almost 40 years off of drugs. And that's incredible to me, even today, So what I'm saying is keep yourself in check. If you're having problems with these things, look for help. Go get help. There's plenty of it out there. You can Google it and it'll come up, And there's plenty of self-help groups and support groups. The one thing I'll say about recovery programs, and I will say this, and I think it's important. I remember being on a psych ward once, right? I said suicide attempt. I was a kid. It was crazy, right? And I was on there, and I was on suicide watch, and 2 days later, my insurance ran out, and wouldn't you know, it was a miracle. I was cured. I went in a 24-hour period at this place. I went from not being allowed to have my shoelaces, a razor blade, or even a fork, right? I had to eat with a spork with somebody sitting right next to me to, oh, you're cured. I had nowhere to go. I had no job. I had no money. I couldn't go back to my house. This was after my first marriage. And these, are you cured? One thing I'll say about recovery, they never asked me for a dime. When you can, if you can, you put a buck or two in the basket, but they don't even care about that. There's cookies and coffee in the back of the room. And I don't care where you go, except OA. I don't think they do that in OA because, it's a food place. People are addicted to food. A little too heavy on the cookies, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I wish you all well with it. My name is Dwight Gillespie. This is Change Your Life Podcast. And this, again, is my experience with my self-will wanting to kill me and how I try to keep that in check on a daily basis. I wish you well. Have a wonderful week. Please, again, check in with us. Share this with your friends. Like and subscribe. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you again. Be well. Bye now.